Hi everyone, welcome to the second in our operational resilience video series. I'm Dan Waltham, one of the directors at FourthLine, joined again by Chris Moran, senior manager and engagement lead in our resilience consulting function. Hi Chris, you all right?
Hi Dan, yep, all good.
Excellent, thank you. So to introduce the concept of the videos, these are questions that we have collected through events and webinars over the course of the last 6 months and are common topics that we're encountering in conversations with clients up and down the land. So the first was all around resilience reporting, metrics and aggregation. This one is around how do you measure your progress towards resilience and magical end goal of 2025. So the question is, how do we measure our progress to maturity and towards the 2025 deadline? Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Dan. So we mentioned this in the first video, and it might become a running theme throughout. But in order to measure your progress, you must understand, first of all, where you want to go to and where you currently are. So the target level of resilience and your current state of resilience. And this should be encapsulated within a resilience strategy document. As alongside that is obviously how do you intend to move from one place to the other. So what program of work are you going to put in place? What priorities are you going to put in place, in particular around obviously the gaps that you identify through things like your impact tolerance testing? Are you going to approach them in a particular order? Are you going to just hit the quick wins, to demonstrate progress as soon as possible? Are you going to do some sort of risk weighting to find out which ones are the most priority, or is it purely going to be potentially a budget decision? When do you have the money to make the investment? But that should all form part of your strategy document so that it's clear to anyone reading it, especially a regulator, that you've got a plan basically to get to 2025 and meet the requirement of being able to evidence that you can stay within your impact tolerances. In terms of measuring the maturity of that program, there is a few things you can obviously do. The obvious is looking at gap closures. How many did you start with? How many have you got currently? The difficulty with this is obviously as the program gets more mature throughout the time frame, you may be finding more and more gaps as you start looking, and turning over more stones. So that might be a slightly distorted view if you solely rely on a count. The other option is looking at things like open actions. How many resilience actions do you currently have in play? What are they on target? And just a general risk mitigation or risk management type progress reporting. Trending, so looking at your important business services, are you actually seeing an uptick in the level of resilience? Can you measure that through things like your maybe pre-existing KPIs? So looking at the number of tech failures, the number of supplier incidents. Are you seeing trending in the output of those metrics, which is seeing progress in terms of the resilience of the firm? Other things to think about in terms of maturity is staff awareness. So you can put in a lot of objective reporting, but if the firm as a whole isn't on board with the journey, the moment sort of like the impetus behind the 2025 deadline sort of goes away, you may find that the program then starts to lose traction. So whilst you still have that deadline in everybody's mindset, it's really important that you get everybody engaged, embed the concept of resilience so that maturity becomes a self-sustaining objective rather than just a compliance with the policy deadline. Other ways that you can measure the maturity of your program is to actually look at the scope. So obviously, is it a simple case of it could be just more IBSs, or it could be where you're embedding resilience in more areas of the business. Change management is a particular good one to look at, purely because of the risk inherent in change. And can you evidence that you're moving into that more proactive discipline of managing the resilience in that space? So, Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. I wanted to just really support your point around resilient strategy and in this transition to 2025. There's a feeling in some firms that the work has been done. They are resilient. We've reached the 2022 deadline. What role does the strategy play in helping resilient stakeholders, helping SMFs 24 in sort of overcoming inertia internally?
So I think one of the key benefits is an opportunity to link the resilience objectives to the business objectives. So actually looking at how can resilience prevent or help the firm to achieve its objectives by preventing disruptions. If you have a profit target, for example, a sufficiently large disruption event could fundamentally impact your ability to achieve that. So your resilience strategy should include sort of protecting the firm from things that could prevent business that achieving your business objectives, and that sort of helps senior stakeholders and the firm to understand why it's important, and I say maintain that impetus behind the program. I think that also sort of lend itself going forward. So post 2025, again, it's still not a case of, well, we've hit that deadline, therefore the job's done. So making, as I mentioned previously, making resilience part of the organization's mindset by embedding it within the culture and aligning it to, let's say, the business objectives is a really good way of doing that.
Right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the overview, Chris, and we will see everybody on the next session. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. See you all then.